Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we are back with more Jujutsu Wonder, this time to examine a cursed womb arc. And actually I did get a little bit beyond that, because quite frankly the way things ended were a bit too sudden, and I'm really glad I did, mostly because of Panda. That's very much all I ever need to see to sell me on just about anything. There's a talking panda sorcerer? Sure, this is immediately the best thing I have ever read. So if you want to see more Jujutsu content, both the panda and I would implore you to press the subscribe button for the New World Review, which will allow me to curse you with regular Jujutsu Kaisen content uploaded straight into your YouTube feed. But as we are still in the introductory phase of the series, the premise of this arc is still fairly simple. Bad things are happening at a bad place. And so we've called in our 3 first-year Jujutsu students to deal with it, one of which still has really no knowledge of how to use curse power at all. Fairly standard shonen setup, I suppose, but with some very nice intrigue added towards the end, discovering that this was all effectively a setup to kill Yuji and very potentially our other 2 first years as well, which I quite like as an overall idea because generally it usually feels really contrived to get the inexperienced protagonist involved in a situation well out of their league, but Akutami has engineered this rather well, and of course, rather morbidly. But the first few pages of this arc swiftly smack me in the face with something I both love and something that I love a lot less, one may even say strongly dislike, and this has to do with the whole curse grading system. So if any of you followed my Black Clover review videos, then you'll be well aware that I love and crave structure with power systems, and that is certainly what we were given here. It's always interesting to delve into any form of ranking system, and having 5 grades of curses to work with seemed good in theory. However, I do think that we may have immediately ruined that setup by skipping straight to the top and dealing with a special grade curse, which to be fair, I suppose is the entire idea. Stuff like this generally gets brought up as a way of inflating drama, setting up a hierarchy so that we as the audience feel that moment of, oh shit, when we cut straight to the top. It does verge on making the system itself slightly redundant though, because that's 4 levels of probably nothing, and the arc is also resolved with the whole idea that the special grade is meaningless due to the vast difference between Sukuna and the insect. That's plenty of complaining though, because other than that, things were pretty damn strong during this arc, and having brought him up, let's begin with the man of the hour, Ryomen Sukuna. And the moment where he took over Yuji's body was pretty phenomenal, entirely expected due to the nature of their shared existence, but I have to say that there is just something so wonderfully warped about seeing Sukuna's personality manifest within Yuji's body, especially as we get to know Sukuna more. But watching this kid whose only real mantra in life is to help people, being taken over by a presence that exists to ensure the exact opposite, and not only that, but having such a damn sadistic smile as well, both cool and terrifying, well, altogether it's quite something. And it's also just interesting to watch this struggle begin. Sukuna, a powerful man, maybe, he's not a man, is he? I don't know what he is, but he's obsessed with attaining life, versus Yuji, a relatively powerless boy, resigned to death. And on paper that should really not be a good combination, the desire to live should win out every time, but with the exception that Yuji is determined to die on his own terms, which means ridding the world of Sukuna, and that's just great. A crazy balancing act to pull off that will lead both of them to a lot of incidental cooperation as it did during this arc. Another interesting thing to note about Yuji in particular though is that he isn't anywhere near as flat of a character as he may have originally seemed. He basically gave me exactly what I wanted from a continuation, and what I mean by this is that I'm sure you know the whole classic protagonist trope of the insanely driven young boy who never gives up no matter what the thing is. Well, something quite pleasantly surprising about Yuji in this arc is that he has a pretty extreme inner conflict, tossing up his ideas of pain and fear versus his mission to quote, help everyone. There's this very genuine struggle of self, and it makes Yuji far more relatable and I would say far more human. There is this side to him that simply isn't cool, if you will, which if anything makes his ultimate resolve that much more impressive. And speaking of, that actually leads us into the cliffhanger of the previous arc actually, where it was stated that one of our precious first years would die, and as suspected, it was Yuji. Although I'm nowhere near as annoyed with this as I thought I might be. Given the scenario that was set up, I do think that Yuji's decision to sacrifice himself was very well made, although I'll reserve full judgment until his inevitable revival has been completed, because usually I despise using death or a death scene in any series where the character is later revealed to be alive or revived, but Jujutsu Kaisen lands in a very interesting area. Given that the major motif of the series at this point is death, it actually becomes far more natural and more welcome to delve into it, because I suppose a big problem with death is that usually if it's used well within a story, there's actually surprisingly little to explore. All you have are the lingering effects of death on those left behind, but it looks like Yuji is about to confront this concept in a more head-on manner, which is quite exciting. And that is where I left off, by the way. I got to the end of chapter 10, which is Yuji smack-talking Sukuna in the very corpsey realm, and I'm quite excited to see where that goes. But our other major focus of this arc would be Fushiguro. And rather wonderfully, I got a bit of what I was looking for last week with some personality expansion, and in fact I got a bit more than what I bargained for, because we've got some pretty big questions coming from his general direction, such as who's to say someone you save won't kill someone in the future, as well as the whole theoretical concept that karma doesn't happen on its own. It's a more active process, at least according to Fushiguro. All of which is quite fascinating because of course most of his philosophy is very much at odds with his decision to save Yuji in the first arc, something that is resolved via epiphany of just wanting to save Yuji because he's a good person, regardless of the world-ending evil residing within him. So Fushiguro is actually a bit of a complicated guy with a clear sense of his own moral values. I did notice that he didn't come to the conclusion of wanting to help everyone though, as Yuji does. His personality didn't actually change as a result of this arc, which is fascinating, and he still wishes to help only those whom he deems good, which sounds like it could lead to some fun potential conflict in the future. There was also some potential seeding for his father as well. Like there was this whole weird line that went something like, well, my father didn't even know my gender, but he's still alive out there somewhere. The latter of which honestly seems like a pretty pointless thing to say unless he's going to appear at some stage in the future. Such family drama. I'm also quite enamored by his abilities to create doggos, froggos, and even a big old mask bird, although I am annoyed that the white dog got destroyed. He was such a good boy. Although I suspected that may happen when Akutami made a point of focusing on how cute it was, because that is the moment where I suddenly remembered what it is I was reading, and that good things have a habit of turning bad pretty quickly in Jujutsu Kaisen. Which, speaking of, I do quite like the continued use of sheer horror to great effect. It's nice to have that mechanism to immediately flip a switch, which in this case would be something like encountering a bunch of bodies all smushed into balls, or the incredible ease by which Yuji just up and lost a hand. And along with all of this comes morbidity as well, like the idea that we immediately found that lady's son dead within a few pages, because in a more typical series the idea would have been to save that son and really embody that Yuji mantra of helping people with some sort of grand act. But here we have more of a bitter dose of reality. And I like that Yuji then has to think, well, what's the best way to help that lady now? And he lands on the idea of returning her son's body to her, which is such an incredibly depressing thought, but that's just the territory that this series comes with. And it's starting to make me wonder if Jujutsu Kaisen might have been better served as a seinen manga and really allowed to push some of the boundaries that we really can't touch in a shonen series. Although with that said, I do think the series is doing a pretty damn good job straddling these lines thus far, and I only hope that it continues to dive deeper. Now, because I also read one chapter further than the actual arc, I was also introduced to what looks like our first set of primary antagonists that are not Sukuna, and yes, sure, I have to give Akutami all the credit in the world for being bold enough to create a volcano-headed Cyclops. That guy, that thing, that curse, whatever it is, it's eye-catching. Pun intended. In fact, I don't really remember any of the other curse, spirit, being things that appeared alongside Mr. Happy Face, because the Cyclops was just so attention-grabbing. Not that that's a bad thing though, in fact, rather unexpectedly, we even had a bit of a sit-down chat with Cyclops-san, where he unveiled an interesting counter-philosophy. The whole concept that curses are actually humanity's purest form, and what inhabits this world as we speak are these lying facades of humankind. And I really like that as an antagonistic motivating thought. Much better than your classic, well, I'm more powerful than you, so this world should be mine kind of crap. In Jujutsu Kaisen, it actually seems like there's more of a core belief to be grappled with. Because as far as I'm aware, the Cyclops, well, he's not exactly wrong, is he? The curses aren't aberrations of the world, they're more of just natural evolution, are they not? And I don't know, but are we eventually going to have to grapple with the idea that perhaps curses have just as much right to exist as the humans that spawn them? No idea, but I do like that these sorts of ideas are being brought up at such an early stage. It makes me much more intrigued to see more of these antagonists as soon as possible, please. And similarly, we have also expanded into a batch of new students, one of which is the aforementioned panda. And in all seriousness, pandas are by far my favorite animal, so this is very welcome news. I really don't care how a talking panda exists or why it might be a mighty cursed sorcerer, none of it matters. All I know is that Jujutsu Kaisen has gone from like a 7 to a 10, all due to panda propaganda. And 2 other students were also introduced. I don't have any strong comment on them at this time, but they did also seem to come with a reminder that Jujutsu Kaisen is, for all of its cursed horror, also a high school series with an upcoming inter-high event against another Jujutsu school. A Jujutsu battle where the only rule is no killing, which, well, that should be fun. But actually, do you know what the worst part about this 5 chapters was? Not enough Gojo. In fact, in the actual cursed Womb arc, there were like 0 units of Gojo, so it was very welcome to see him in the chapter immediately following it, especially with the continued hype surrounding him. He was even identified by Smiley Villain Guy as absolutely essential to get rid of, so I cannot wait to see him in action. Of every character in the series thus far, I would say that he and Sukuna are the only ones that truly hit me with their raw presence. When Gojo was in a panel well, you better believe I'm paying attention. But someone who I definitely wasn't paying attention to though was Kugisaki. She definitely had a very light arc, and I was hoping for some more Fushiguro-style substance coming from her general direction, considering that she was very much thrown in at the last second during the introduction arc. But just as with Fushiguro, I can only assume that her time is coming. But all around, this was a very solid continuation for Jujutsu Kaisen, a nice small arc that explores some shockingly deep concepts in some very blunt ways, setting up a ton of great intrigue, and I cannot wait to dive into more. And that pretty much does it for this blind review of the Cursed Womb arc of Jujutsu Kaisen. And what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below, or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Jujutsu sorcery, then please do check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for very maybe regular Jujutsu Kaisen morbidity delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.